Where does Florida State stand with their football program as it relates to Miami and Florida, who are both on the up? Let's talk about it right here on Locked On Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Into Locked On Seminoles, I am Brian Smith, hometown college football recruiting analyst, here to help you understand everything going on with Florida State football. I bring on Jesse Coger from Plant the Spear to help me kind of give an overview of what I think now that we're at least halfway, maybe a little past in spring football. Jesse, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. Glad to be on. Glad to be talking about this program right now. You know, hopefully spring is a time of new things. And so hopefully there's some new growth within this program. So maybe we can have something decent to talk about this year. But it's been quiet. I mean, we knew they were going to have closed camp. I feel like last year still more information came out than this year. So it really does feel like we're kind of flying blind going into the summer and the fall. But I think we have enough that we're starting to get some pretty good narratives, some pretty good storylines about what this team may or may not be going into fall camp.
I agree about that, and we'll definitely dive into spring practice, especially in segment 2. And I've got 8 questions for Jesse. Definitely part of that is spring practice heavy, but I want to give an overview. Number one, it's not any secret. Miami is up right now. They were just in the national title game. That's not a news flash. The new piece of information that I really didn't know what to expect, John Summerall goes to UF. Good coach, but he'd never coached P4. I had no idea what to expect. I said, if he could recruit, it's pretty interesting because that's an easy program to win at.
Yeah.
If you get recruiting going. Well, they just got, in my opinion, the number 1 recruit in the country, and he's conservatively top 10. And his name's Maxwell Hiller, and he got a kid from PA to do that. That's not a good sign for Florida State or anybody else for that matter. They start getting offensive and defensive linemen on that level. Florida State, in my opinion, is going to be more pressured to make a move. And we all know what move I'm talking about. Yeah. We'll get into that more and more as the show goes on. But, Jesse, I'm not really understanding how, but Florida State's actually battling pretty well in recruiting, minus offensive line, which is their biggest Achilles, which doesn't make any sense. They've only got a couple official visits lined up that I know of on the O-line, which is mind-boggling. Are you surprised they even have like a half dozen commits? Because the kids they have committed, I like all of them. Are you surprised by that considering Norvell's circumstance, or is it just, hey, this is Florida State, it shouldn't be that hard?
Yeah, I think when you look at Florida State's situation, the good thing is you did have some fresh blood, right? And so what I've heard so far of the last couple of weeks is that the Nick Williams guy is a good recruiter, good, strong recruiter there. Cam Martin at running back position is a good, strong recruiter there. They're intense. And so you are at least seeing some of the staff churn that we saw over this past year, where it looks like some of the recruiting things have been addressed to a degree. Now, obviously you have, it's an octopus. There's a lot of tentacles to recruiting now, as you know. NIL is a factor. Is Florida State going to spend enough money when you start getting into the part where you have to close on these top tier recruits? Because, Florida State doesn't really have a problem getting guys on campus. It's actually getting them into class. And so are they going to pay? Are they going to be able to close on these? That's been a lot of the biggest problems for the recruiters for Florida State, is they have not been able to close. But I think Michael, my co-host Michael on our show, was telling me the other day that Florida State, it was rumored that they paid like $25 million for that roster last year. So the thing is, like, maybe they're not spending Miami money, Ohio State money, things like that, but they're spending enough money that you should be able to put together a pretty solid roster at $25 million. So NIL limitations notwithstanding, Florida State has a geographical advantage, the brand advantage, the historical advantage of being that program that resonates with a lot of people. Obviously, that success is getting farther in the rearview mirror. So to me, the question is, maybe are the new pieces that they brought in that are going to help the recruiting? Because as me and you both know, yes, you can build things out of the portal. You can look at Indiana, and that's kind of a rare thing, right? More than Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama building through the high school ranks and then supplementing through the portal. It's always with Florida State under Mike Norvell, can they recruit well enough to do that? And so that's not been the case. And so now it's like, with the new, better recruiting pieces you brought in, can you outrun your shadow? Because right now it's the uncertainty of Mike Norvell's future. Those guys might be great recruiters, but it might not matter next year because he might not be here. So I think one of the big things that we're actually going to talk about on our show coming up is, like, kind of, can you outrun that shadow? Can you sneak up and win 7 and 8 games this year? If you get there, is it where you want to be? No, but would it be good enough with better recruiters on the staff to maybe, that WWE meme where like the Undertaker comes up out of the casket when you think he's gone? Could that be what leads to the program rising from the ashes? At the end of the day, they're going to have to win games, because if the coach gets fired, it's not going to matter. And then, between the 3 programs in the state of Florida here, I think the problem is you're just at different stages right now, right? Florida is brand new. They got the brand new coach smell. So if you say they go 7 and 5, okay, well, you know what? It's better than Napier's been doing, and we're getting some good recruits, to your point, and then they can keep rolling that momentum. If Miami wins 10 games, okay, man, they're still rolling, right? They're still spending. If Florida State wins 7 games, it's like, dude, you're 7 years in and you're winning 7 games. So
yeah, it's a good point. It is
equal every program, depending on how it shakes out. But, Florida State, as they say in college football, the end-all, be-all, the cure-all is to win games. And I think if you start doing that with the upgraded staff, I think you could see them start to pull in some pieces. And to your point, I do like a lot of the guys that they have in this class.
The linemen are the key, and that's one of the reasons that I brought up Maxwell Hiller, the kid that's committed to Florida.
Yeah. And it's always been our weakness, too. I
mean, it goes back to the Bowden era. When they would lose games, it was always offensive line at the forefront. Always. If they'd had better offensive lines in Bobby's tenure, he'd have won a half dozen titles.
Yeah.
That's one spot.
It's been a decade-long problem here, and it's like, who can come in and fix it? Now, I think Herb Hand is a better O-line coach than we've had in the last couple of years. So I think the clay that he gets, whether it's good clay or not, I think he can mold it better than some of the other coaches have in the past. So I do trust that, but we still got to start seeing it. I've had some people bring up on our show in the comments like, okay, well, at what point do we start holding Herb Hand, accountable for his recruiting? And that's it's got to be soon. Like, it's got to be really soon. And I know he has a hard product to sell. I get that. But one thing I really hope for, right, like he signed up for it. Again, yeah. If you could see like a Micah Pettis go in the draft this year, if you could see the center that we had go in the draft this year, I think that would be big in helping him, because we don't put guys in the NFL very often on the offensive line. But that's the problem. I did a piece on this program a while back where it was like trouble in the trenches, why Florida State's struggles start up front. This program always seems to be built outside in, right? Skill positions, quarterback, things like that.
My whole life.
And then they just don't prioritize the trenches. But then you take a team like Georgia under Kirby Smart. It's a great example.
Oh,
you build the trenches first, and then you take a former walk-on quarterback like Stetson Bennett and win 2 national titles with him. It's always been Florida State's Achilles heel. And so, now to your point, if Florida starts recruiting these guys, we know, unfortunately, Miami has no problem landing offensive linemen.
Right.
That's going to be the gap that really separates these programs, is what you do in the trenches on the recruiting trail. You're dead on with that.
Let me give you an example of how much Kirby Smart prioritizes O-line. I research O-line recruiting a lot. In the last 5 years, they signed 27 offensive linemen, more than anybody else.
And I would be willing to bet that's probably about 90% of them are blue chip guys.
Yeah, 4-star and up.
Yep.
Yeah, probably 20 of them or more.
Yeah, at least.
Some of them get hurt, bust, transfer, whatever. But, I mean, if you sign that many guys, and shocker, they've got a left tackle that turned pro after last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they take one 5-star out that gets hurt, and then a 4-star, high 4-star, 5-star comes in and relieves them. You know what I mean? And that's
what I mean.
That's what Florida State needs. You need a pipeline of guys. You can't be doing this starting 5, starting over every single year. You just can't, because it's too unpredictable.
They've got a few guys. Otto's got a year after this, if I remember right. Jonathan Daniels. Obviously, they've got a few guys from the last couple classes got a chance, but they took a bunch of high ceiling, low floor guys. 1 or 2 will hit, or 1 or 2 will never play. It's really random. But here's my question. I asked another similar question yesterday as I was getting ready for the show. Went up this morning for what we're doing. This is going to be a Friday morning. We're doing this Thursday afternoon. But I said, when was the last time Florida State signed an in-state quarterback that was elite, not just some guy? I said, it's Florida State. And you could ask the same thing about offensive line, not just like Jonathan Daniels was pretty good. He was a kid you should get. He's from Pensacola, but I wouldn't have considered him elite. He was on that fringe. He was a 4-star guy, but recruited by what? When was the last elite kid they signed out of Florida that was an O-lineman?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right.
How is it
You're
possible?
it's like there's a recruiting bubble over Tallahassee. Like we can sign skill players left and right. It's no
Oh
problem.
my
But
God. They got 6 receivers in this last class. They
Yeah.
can all play.
offensive line has just been it's a quagmire. I don't know, like that there's no other word to say for it. Now I will say this, like Alex Atkins recruited his butt off, but he couldn't coach his way out of a wet paper bag when it came to developing talent. So at least what I'm hoping is with Herb Hand, if you're not landing the 4 stars, you're at least getting guys, enough out of the 3 stars that you don't have 2024's offensive line, right? You don't, like, you at least have a
I never
comparable.
want to even hear about that line again.
Exactly.
To be honest with you.
If Florida State could just have an offensive line that's average, right? Not terrible, god awful, below average. It opens it up. Like this year's a great example. I know we're going to get into offensive line, so I won't talk about it too in depth right now. But with the running game that you have, if your offensive line is just what it was last year, you'll have a pretty good running game. The problem is it doesn't sound like it might be. And you're also bottlenecking your offense at the quarterback position, which makes you overly reliant on a run game. And at what point do you become predictable? And so that's the hard part.
Yeah, I don't see how it's going to go real well, unless this something turns like I'm sure we don't have all the info, but like they've got a couple O-line visits lined up.
Yeah.
That's a catastrophe waiting to happen, especially when Maxwell Hiller is headed to games. And I know that Mario's probably getting Mark Matthews, who might be the 2nd or 3rd best player in the country, and he's an offensive tackle too. Like it just can't happen like that over and over. So
yeah.
When we come back, I'm going to ask 8 questions for Jesse. Part of it we'll be talking O-line, what we think about spring ball, and more. That is next right here on Locked on Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who know the score, never tells the entire story. For Florida State fans, they are some of the most loyal in all of college sports. Even under these tough times, they were packing out Doak Campbell Stadium, and they deserve credit. And they deserve credit before anything else happens beyond spring, because it's still been a tough time, and I appreciate everything they do. For me here at Locked on Seminoles, hats off to Florida State fans. There's more to the highlights than anything else that you could imagine, because all the early mornings, the late night runs, and the fans supporting it all the way, constantly showing up for their squad on and off the court. The all-new Mazda CX-5 moves the same way, with more space to connect, a bold new design, and more intuitive technology, so you can stay connected to the road in every position you play. The all-new Mazda CX-5, more to move every side of you. We are also brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. It is tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that is not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if you really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade with Intuit TurboTax, which now has an in-person location nationwide. Just about any place you go, you can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. TurboTax Expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time updates and go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club down below in the description. There is a link. You can get a month free with code MARCH. Check out the Everydayer Club. All right, let's talk about 8 questions here. O-line will definitely be involved in multiple different ways. But first one, Jesse, are you buying that Malachi Marshall is a legitimate option to start at some point, even if it's just one game, before the end of 2026 concludes? What do you say?
Yes. My answer to this question has actually changed a lot since spring camp, right? I am not also going to say that maybe I wouldn't rule him out to be the starter at the beginning of 2026.
The way spring's gone, it wouldn't shock me.
Exactly. And that is really what changed my opinion on it, right? I thought, coming in, my mindset was, they're not going to say this, but we had read through the tea leaves. It's Ashton Daniels' job to lose, right? The question is, was Kevin Sperry in the quote unquote race that we thought we had, where Norvell had led some comments, I think it would have been Ashton Daniels' job to lose. Maybe it was his job to lose, but was Kevin Sperry good enough to come and take the job? That, I think, was the big question. We had before where you had, Tommy was the guy. There was no question about that. DJU was the guy. There was no question about that. This one, seems to be a legitimate question. I think what the question for us at quarterback now is, why is there no separation? Is it because Kevin Sperry is just that guy? Or is it because Ashton Daniels is just who we thought he was from the last 4 years that we watched him play? It's a guy that's got 24 touchdowns, 22 picks. What's the number one thing they've said's wrong with him? Turnovers. And so to me, I think when you talk about the quarterback battle and you're looking at if all things are equal across the board and there is no clear winner, summer's going to be very, very important for who can separate themselves, who's going to emerge as a leader, who's going to be putting in the work off season, getting on page with these receivers. You thought that Malachi Marshall not being here in the spring would have put him really far behind. But apparently there is no proven leader right now. So I think he can come in. You know, he did make some comments in his opening press conference that, like, he knows he's behind the 8 ball, but he's going to be doing everything he can to get ready. The staff's going to be helping him, sending him stuff to get ready with. I'm sure some of the NIL money will help with, you know, he's not in a JUCO weight room and on a nutrition plan anymore. So maybe he's gained 10 pounds by the time he comes in. I think if all things are equal and he comes in and shows up in the summer and is as good as he looks on film, man, I'm telling you what, in the fall, I think it's a 3-way quarterback race. I really do. But I do look for somebody
crazy. It's
coming in the fall to separate themselves. But yeah, I think, you know, I think in a situation where, say, he doesn't start at the beginning of the season and it is a mid to late season thing, I think that's going to be when we have found out that it wasn't that Kevin Sperry was that good. It was that Ashton Daniels was not that good. And you're not seeing what you want to see from either one. And so then you insert Malachi Marshall and maybe he's a spark. You know, maybe he gets in late in a game that you're down big or something, leads a couple touchdown drives. And you're like, I think we should probably play this guy because we have nothing else to lose.
Well, on that end, I know people are going to say, hey, what about a guy that's, let's be honest, he's coming in summer, he's got to learn it. This is not an NFL style offense. And really nobody runs that anymore.
Right.
You don't have enough time to insert it. It takes forever. I'm not saying it's perfect, but he'll at least have a chance, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
Make that work. And to that end, I think that if it's not first game, if things go bad and like they lose SMU and Bama, they're going to be at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're going to be desperate. And I will say this on the quarterback battle as a whole. You know, I think the benefit is you do get the New Mexico State game before SMU. So if it's Kevin Sperry, who doesn't have a lot of experience, you could get him a full game. If it's Malachi Marshall, same thing. Ashton Daniels, he's got the experience. He doesn't really need that. I mean, he would, you know, in the system with this offense, that'd be nice too. You know, what they say about quarterbacks, if you have two, you have none. So me personally, this is me. I would like to see maybe you do a half and a half against New Mexico State, but knowing that you have SMU on the backside of that with a long period before you get Alabama right after that, I'd like to know who the guy is by the time. Like if it's Kevin Sperry, I want him to get dang near every rep of that New Mexico State game. Get right into the SMU. Yep. And then you get a long period.
Summer is the problem. And it's right now it's going to be 50-50. Then you add another quarterback. That's
right. It's going to make the waters muddy. But to me, if it's the young guy without a lot of experience, I think he needs every snap of that New Mexico State game before SMU. You've got to. And at least the good thing is with Ashton Daniels is it's not like you paid $3.5 million. So if he loses the starting job, it is what it is. You know what I mean? You're probably not going to be based like if you had brought Calandry in, who was rumored to be like $2.5-3 million, you probably would have a hard time justifying putting him on the bench for Kevin Sperry. But at this point, you're so desperate to win. I don't care if it's Malachi Marshall, Kevin Sperry, whoever it is, you need them to be ready to go by game one. And I would like to see them get the bulk of the snaps against New Mexico State so they can be prepared for SMU, because that SMU game is massive for Mike Norvell in this season.
If they lose that game, it's one thing. But if they get beat 24-10, and the quarterback play, like, let's be honest.
Yeah. Historically,
Florida State is one of the supercharged. It's a Ferrari.
Yeah.
It hasn't been Ferrari like,
you
know, and passing the football, not running it.
Yeah.
Passing it. Florida State fans want to see the ball in the air. It can't be 5 yards here, 5 yards there, scared to throw to the middle of the field.
Yep.
That will not fly.
Yeah. So, and I think obviously the biggest question for Marshall is how does it translate from JUCO? That's tough. I mean, he played with JUCO guys, so he didn't have a Deuce Robinson. That's clearly an advantage. But, you know, he's not the runner that Ashton Daniels is. So I think it's like, if you're looking for pure arm talent, right now, I'm going to lean Malachi Marshall, and then probably Kevin Sperry and Ashton Daniels aren't that far separated. So it may come down to who's the better runner. And we know Sperry's got some mobility. We know Ashton Daniels is a proven runner. Malachi Marshall, not so much. So it really, I think it just kind of depends on how the rest of the identity of the team shapes out. Like it sounds like this wide receiver room's pretty darn good. Does that do you any good if you're not good at quarterback? And so you got to find a guy who can distribute the ball. You know what I mean? That's the thing. You have to be able to leverage your strengths, not just have a guy back there because he can run the ball when you got a room full of Corvettes or Ferraris at the receiver room. That's what you want to take advantage of. And I just question right now with the quarterback issues, is Ashton Daniels going to be good enough to do that?
I'm not sure, but they'll have multiple guys at running back, wide receiver, and possibly even tight end, at least don an NFL jersey for a year or so.
Yeah, I love the skill positions on offense. I really do. I think they're loaded at the skill positions.
I do too. When we come back, we'll continue on with this, but man, what a wild year it is for the court. Like, I don't know if we've ever had a wilder year, honestly.
Yeah. And a more critical year.
It'd be hard to argue because if Norvell doesn't get it right, like you said at the very beginning, you start 1-2 and things are awkward. Yeah, that's just not going to get it. So
it's going to be tough. You would turn into like a Napier-Lagway situation. Like, hey, look what I have, though. You should bring me back based on this. But are you willing to buy that when you saw how that experiment already went, a couple hours down the road? Probably not.
Probably not. More on this topic when we come back here, Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and one position you still have to fill is sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll be speaking with you, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates that check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who have all the things that you need to reduce stress. Spend less time worrying about it and get more results when you need that right person to cut through the chaos. Indeed Sponsored Jobs, and listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Again, Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, Jesse, question number 2. The 2026 O-line is better or worse than the 2025 unit? I actually struggled with this one, and I've talked about it multiple times. I think they're deeper. That's the one thing I know. But like, is it better? I've struggled. I don't have an answer.
To me, I would say no right now. The ceiling, I think, is a little bit lower, and that's nothing to do with it's not a knock on the guys that they brought in, right? Because I think they did good with what they had. They brought some pretty good pieces that I do like. I think there's a lot of potential there. The good thing is they've been playing in the spring, where we know last year most of that offensive line was out with injury in the spring, so they can start working on their continuity a little bit sooner. To me, it really all just comes down to, like, when you look at that offensive line that they had last year, Michael Pettis was a top 10 graded tackle in the SEC. Luke Pettibon was the best returning center in the ACC. You had a guard that you had coached at UCF for multiple years. You had a returning Power 5 starter in Richie Leonard. You had Jacob Rizzi, who was a really good 6-man for you. And you had a Power 5 starter, at your other tackle position coming over from Vanderbilt. This year, it's more of guys who, outside of the Chaplin kid, who obviously was really good at Virginia Tech, had some issues at Auburn. I think we've discovered it's the hearing problems that they'll get straightened out. But everyone else doesn't feel like they have as high a ceiling and as high a floor as that group did last year. I think people really underestimate the quality of guys that they brought in last year on that offensive line. You just didn't have good quarterback play, and you had one pretty good running back. Like, if you'd had Trey Wisner last year, I think your running game would have been a lot better too. So I would say right now, probably no, but I don't think it will be far off, because to your point, I think the depth is going to be a little bit better with having 2 or 3 homegrown guys that have come up through the system that can be plug and play guys. Like, I think last year you pretty much had 6 guys. I think this year you can have 7 to 8. I just don't think the ceiling is as high as last year. Again, with that being said, that doesn't mean this line will be bad, because last year's line was actually pretty darn good. I mean, you were top 15 in rush, in rushing last year, in rushing offense. So can you be top 25? I think that's kind of, maybe not as good as last year, but I don't think it's going to be far off either because I trust the guy molding the clay, and that's Herb Hand.
I'm going to make this a two-parter. We've got enough information left. I'm going to make this 2 shows for tomorrow. So this is the end of part 1. We're going to start part 2 right now.
Cool.
Very much for everybody for checking us out. Please hit that like and hit that subscribe. We will see you again soon right here.
Thank you.
Locked On Seminoles.